Last 2 weeks, we've shown you the origin of Matsu with our world-famous paper puppet pals, and we've traveled the roads of Dajia during the Dajia Pilgrimage. When we first arrived, hundreds of booths had been set up to give out food and drink. And they had these little carts that were sitting there with a bunch of people in costumes, and they had temple troops and people were rehearsing, the lion dancers. They didn't have their lion on, so they had these big flamingo pants, and you're kind of like, whoa, it's a little bit tango salsa-ish. And in that moment, there's this very real feeling of this is what it looks like behind the scenes when an army is going to go out to war, and they need all those logistical support troops behind the scenes. You need people to help feed you and support you if you're going to be a large marching force. Those who are participating in the parade, they might have different items that kind of showed us where they were from. Maybe they had a hat that would say their temple name or a shirt, and it was sort of a source of pride and just representation. So initially I saw what you'd call a sedan chair being carried in, or some people might call it a God chair. Americans tend to call it something really stupid like a chariot because we don't really have something equivalent. We don't know what it is.
Sedan chair. Oh, we thought it was Sedan chair, sorry. We've misunderstood the rules. Oh, that's it, we better go home then, lads. Oh. It's not a sedan chair, it's a sedan chair. Oh. Let's go.
But it's basically a big booth on poles that's carried, and this is the carriage of the god. So it might be a carriage of a god that's arriving, or for Matsu, it might be the carriage that she's going to ride in for the next 9 days to see different parts of Taiwan and visit temples. In Matsu's case, it has a little GoPro attached so you can get that live feed because Matsu is pretty modern. You'd also see these small little idols come and they'd visit Matsu, and that's one of the things that temples do. They communicate to each other by bringing another temple group with their god. The god visits, and then the god either goes back to its temple, or some of them might join along in the pilgrimage. From this point, they started this huge kind of celebration where groups started to do lion dances and dragon dances and various different cultural festivities. There's a lot of fireworks too, martial arts. If you want to see all that, you can check our last vlog where we go into detail of just showing some of that. But basically for hours, maybe 5 or 6, there was just this incredible performance going on. So then chaos breaks out. So fireworks start going off and this weird umbrella thing comes out spinning, and it's kind of supposed to protect against all the yin or the yin energy that's in the area that's negative. And Matsu's carriage comes out. As it passes by the people who are kneeling, they all of a sudden stand up. And they not only stand up, then they start rushing out because they're about to start the pilgrimage. And this is just such a crazy feeling. You really understand in this moment that if there is an emergency, you would be killed in a stampede. Like, the crowd comes alive and you're just lost in a sea of people, and it literally could crush you if the crowd wanted to. And so there's this feeling of just you're being pushed along and dragged. It's also an excellent place to lose someone like Hailey on accident, but she's alive. Watch last week's video if you need to see that. So at this point, the marchers then start this long procession all the way to their first destination, which is a town 13 kilometers away. And you got to realize at this point it's 10, 11 at night, and they're going to be walking until at least 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And as you pass by, you see this extremely sophisticated network to help them. So local shops are offering free food and water. You see these trucks that actually drive by, and if someone's really tired, they allow them to kind of rest in it or sleep, which is really good because I filmed one and I was a little bit nervous that it was carrying a corpse because I didn't know about the truck thing, and I was like, what is going on through the night sky? They even have shower trucks, and people sleep on the temple floor because this is going to be a 9-day pilgrimage, 300 kilometers. People aren't going to smell the best, but they'll need some sort of care. Maybe they need their clothes washed. You see tents, you see lights, you see police helping out to direct traffic. Hundreds of thousands of people. It's incredible. Like, it's a logistical nightmare, and they're somehow handling it with flying colors. What I observed was perhaps one of the most incredible, hospitable displays of unity among a people group I've ever seen.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
And everyone was just helping each other and cheering, and it was really kind of an interesting, fascinating look into a culture that's all bent towards doing the same thing. But that's also oversimplifying it. There was this fierce competitive nature to the event, and there's people kind of being like, I'm gonna out-worship you. No, I'm gonna out-worship you. That might not be what they were saying out loud, but you kind of tell that like some people are like, we're the lion dance this year. Yeah, we're the good lion dance.
To seal the deal on the 2019 Worship Leader Fantasy Draft victory, I will now pick the Worship Leader Holy Trinity.
What's that?
It's Pat Barrett's songwriting ability.
Stop.
It's Chris Tomlin's platform. And it's Mac Powell's voice.
So over the next 9 days, people are going to create lifelong memories. And they're going to push themselves physically and emotionally. And for some of them, this is going to be the biggest thing that they've done in their life. It's the people who love Matsu that make the Dajia Mazu Pilgrimage happen. And it made me think, if it took this much effort and support for something that lasted 9 days, what would you do if you had to do this for months? Or even years? Well, I'm gonna compare and contrast you, then compare and contrast you again. A little Randy Travis.
Amen.
To my 21st century type of lifestyle, Dajia Mazu feels insane, like going back in time. But it's really not that far removed from people in history. Maybe your grandfather or your great-grandfather fought in one of the world wars, and they know what it was like to be stuck in this large group of people, an army, marching for a long time, to have carts behind them that are bringing food and supplies, to be going to the front lines and back from the front lines. They understand what it's like and the logistics that are needed to keep a large group of people alive, fed, and healthy. So this made me think about the longest pilgrimage in scripture that I can think of, which was the Exodus. And it's a grueling one. The Israelites find themselves looking for the promised land for 40 years, which is not a small amount of time. And when you look at an event like Dajia Mazu and all that's involved to get these hundreds of thousands of people to do this, you kind of realize how literally impossible it is for a group of people in the desert to even survive, let alone for 40 years without some sort of help. You have to feed people, you have to clothe people. Back then you had to protect people. You'd have to stay on the route together instead of getting lost. You'd need that water. You'd have to take care of hygiene. And especially in a desert wilderness, it's not an easy thing to do. So it's absolutely miraculous that in the scriptures we see the Israelites have done this for 40 years. It's an incredible story. The Exodus, though, wasn't just about Israel. It was about God and his relationship with Israel. You see, the scriptures talks about the Israelites being fed with the bread of heaven,
like coriander seed,
and God opening up sources of water in the midst of barren lands. It shows this idea of they couldn't have made it without God. And even despite this, the Israelites continue to rebel and sin and forget God's goodness all the time.
We'll make a god for us. A god of gold. A golden calf!
And God keeps showing great mercy and love. And sometimes he has to show some tough love because they are really turning against him all the time. And during this time, their sandals didn't wear out, their clothing didn't fade, and God provided in this super miraculous way. I just could not imagine something along the lines of the Dajia Mazu happening without hundreds of thousands of people working together. And the Exodus itself, it wasn't easy.
Going out for the first time in a full spacesuit, nobody else around here, the thought does go through your mind, where am I right now?
Like, they had to break down their camp, they had to follow rules, and in this super harsh environment where they've got enemies everywhere, and if the Egyptians saw him, let alone like a little outpost, they're gonna be like, I gotta stab those guys. Look what they did to Pharaoh. God was able to lead the people of Israel to a land of abundance. And that made me think, like, I can walk into a 7-Eleven or a McDonald's at any hour. In this modern world, you kind of lose reverence for the reality that throughout history, just 48 hours in the wilderness was enough to kill a lot of people, whether it's a lack of food and water and shelter. We just could not survive without community and without people helping us.
I'm preparing my family for the total destruction of the power grid.
A devastating earthquake.
A series of catastrophic terrorist attacks.
Supervolcano.
I appreciate the miraculous nature of the Exodus in Israel so much more, having seen what it takes to have a large group of people move a long distance and do it safely and without dying.
A few years ago, my family was on a safari in Africa, and my cousin, Mufasa, he was trampled to death by a pack of wildebeests, and we all took it really hard.
Like the Israelites needed a God who's going to provide them with living water and with food. So the Dajia Mazu Pilgrimage is this incredible event, and it requires immense logistics and costumes and theatrics, and there's really something special about it. You kind of see people working together to accomplish this incredible goal of moving the statue 300 kilometers and doing it with hundreds of thousands of people. And it's the people who love Matsu that makes Dajia Mazu happen. But the God of the Bible is different. He didn't rely on people for provision. It's the God that loves people so much, he makes the Exodus happen. The same sustaining force that fed millions of people in the desert and created heaven and earth. Thank you so much for watching us here on YouTube. Thank you for subscribing and liking and commenting. We are excited to see our community has continued to grow. We're still trying to push towards 300 subscribers, so tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your stepmother, tell your aunt's uncle about us. We'd love to get the word out. In the next few weeks, we'll be diving into some crazy concepts like spirits and angels and demons and possession. We may have filmed an actual possession, so that's a little weird. If you're from the West, you're really scared. If you're from the East, you might be like, oh yeah, it's pretty normal at Temple. We are grateful for your audience, and until next time, have a good life. Well, I'm gonna compare and contrast you, compare and contrast you, amen. As long as Taiwan, folk, religion, and Christianity are different, we're gonna compare and then contrast you again. Oh, baby.